Hi, welcome to the Goblins Pockets. I'm Monica.
And I'm Ian.
This is a show where we review things that relate to D&D and let you know if you should spend your hard-earned money or time on them. We do the hard work. So welcome, Ian, to episode 4 of the Goblins Pockets.
Oh, hi there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah.
Yeah. Still enjoying my new microphone. It's
yeah, it does sound
nice.
good. Yeah. It's a pleasure to edit.
Although I should apologize. I don't know how to podcast. I keep hitting it and Ian has scolded me for it. So
I mean,
apologize.
Everyone loves the sound of you hitting the desk.
Just me hitting my desk and my microphone. I'm just like a child. This is the Italian. I'm Italian. I cannot contain these.
Do you know, that was something I was actually speaking to somebody the other week. When I mentioned you're Italian, they're like, what? Sorry, what? It's your perfect English. People are struggling with that one, but yes, Monica is Italian. So
yes, I am. I am Italian. I have been called Danish before.
This is why we do the Skype, the Zoom format, because I'm in the UK and you're in a far sunnier, warmer country.
Yeah, that's not today, but yes, in general, public opinion would say that this is a far warmer and sunnier country. But yes, I am a long way away, and my Italian DNA makes me move my hands wildly while I speak. I cannot contain these. But yeah, thank you all for the compliments. English.
Yeah, it's great. What are we doing today?
Today we have a show and tell episode, guys. We do. So as tradition dictates, tradition set by one episode before this, but it is tradition nonetheless. We will Ian has the same dice, and I don't know if I had this last time, my memory, but I have a sparkly, I don't think I did. I have a sparkly pink die with like little pink stars in it. That today shall bring me luck, I'm sure.
Right. Sure. Let's do this. I'm rolling. Right.
Let's do it. Ooh.
I got a 1.
See, told you. Sparkly dice gave me a 16.
There you go. Right. Well, I'm okay with this because I know what you were talking about today, and I'm more than happy for you to go first.
I think you're just as excited as I am for this topic.
Yeah.
Today I'm talking about a podcast called Dungeons and Daddies. Have you heard of it?
Not a BDSM podcast, as far as I'm aware. Not usually.
Sometimes a BDSM podcast. Yes. Yes, it is. So I assume you have heard about Dungeons and Daddies, Ian.
You know, Monica, I have. And I actually think it's one of the first things that kind of made me know that I liked you. I think I posted something about it and you fed back like on Instagram and you mentioned it. I was just like, this girl gets it, you know.
I do get it. Oh,
but yeah, yes. Had we been in closer proximity to each other, I think I might have physically fought you for who gets to review Dungeons and Daddies. But yeah, take it away.
And you would have won, yes. So Dungeons and Daddies, for those of you who do not know, is a D&D podcast about 4 dads who are flung in the forgotten realms and have to rescue their lost sons. It is 4 average dads who become kind of classic D&D classes, but we will talk about classic later. A barbarian, a rogue, a druid, and a bard. And they are DM'd by the incredible Anthony Burt in their quest, fundamentally. And their quest brings them throughout the Forgotten Realms and discovering beautiful moments along the way, I would say. Don't you agree, Ian?
It's wonderful.
It is wonderful. It is heartwarming. It is funny. It is so funny that I remember distinctly being in Bristol and walking like along the road and laughing so hard that people looked at me like I was the maniac.
Yeah.
Like I was crying with laughter at, I think it was like episodes, the like beginning of campaign 1, and I was just hysterical with laughter.
There are lots of different D&D, actual play D&D podcasts out there that hit all different notes. If you are looking for comedy actual play, this is the one.
This is it.
Fucking hilarious.
This
and
is absolutely
it's really good.
Yes, it is actual play with a sprinkle of sarcasm, with a sprinkle of kind of mechanics, because I should say that not all of the players are experienced players, and and that is actually, I think, an asset to this podcast.
Yeah, if you're into the kind of the minutia of the rules, the small stuff, and you like details, and you like your rules correct and in line, and if you can't deal without that, then this podcast is not for you.
This podcast is not for the people, for those people, for the rule lawyers. That's not for them.
But don't stop listening now, because we might sell you. It's still worth a listen.
It's absolutely worth listening to. We will transform you into a non-rules lawyer. That's what we will do. So campaign 1 is made out of 68 plus 1 episodes. Beautiful episodes. You may ask, why 68.1 plus 1? Because they have decided to not have 69 episodes, instead 68B. It was the last episode, which was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
68 plus 1 episodes in campaign 1. They're currently on episode 8 of campaign 2. But they also have a wealth of content that is available to their Patreons, of which I am one. I have been a Patreon of theirs since 2020. The pandemic made me like desperate for good content that would make me laugh, and they delivered. So I started to support them then. And I will admit the pledge is absolutely worth the money. They create a lot of incredible content. One of which is worth mentioning, is a one-shot called The Mountains of Dadness, Call of Cthulhu one shot that was kind of envisioned as a prequel to the first campaign, and actually really informs a lot of the campaign. You don't need to hear it in order to understand what is going on. However, it is really useful and enriching for the lore and understanding of what is happening in both campaign 1 and campaign 2.
Yeah, I think this is why Monica gets to review Dungeons and Daddies, because she fans harder than I do, and she pays for content, and she's listened to more stuff than I have, and it pains me a little bit. But as you will learn as this podcast goes on, I am a tight-fisted. My money stays in my hands, and something's got to really wow me to get me to part with my cash. Dungeons and Daddies, it's a close call.
It is. Yeah. It is amazing. So the 4 players are Beth May, Freddie Wong, Matt Arnold, and Will Campos. DM is Anthony Birch, who you may or may not know was the lead writer in Borderlands 2, a very well-known video game. He has a difficult relationship with the video game. Unfortunately, some people kind of hated his tweets or whatever. Like, he is a very nice guy, and the gaming world is not full of very nice people sometimes. However, I believe the game is incredible, and some of the really out there writing that you see in the game definitely transpires in Dungeons and Daddies. Like, his imagination is incredible. His comedic writing is amazing. He is brother to Ashley Birch, who you may know from Critical Role guest, as well as a famous voice actress and voice of Tiny Tina from Borderlands 2, as well as Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. They are an incredible brother-sister duo, incredibly creative, voice acting stars, just comedic geniuses. I can't say, more wonderful things, or enough wonderful things about them. I just love them both very much. And I think Dungeons and Daddies really benefits from the creative spark that Anthony Birch has, because that allows him to create a wonderful storyline and a beautiful campaign. However, he can really roll with the punches.
Yeah. As far as a DM goes, hats off to this guy. He never falters. He might not have the hardest grasp on the rules or anything like that, but he doesn't give a shit. And I think that's part of his appeal, is he just doesn't, he doesn't let anything faze him. He's a very much, he goes along with the crazy shit, and he just lets the players have fun. He's great. The NPCs he creates, the story he creates, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
Like, he really, he'll come across as a bit laissez-faire and very laid back, but that guy puts in work and it shows.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he's the kind of guy who will prepare like a full encounter and a full storyline, and then his players, this may or may not happen, decide to just strip off in the middle of a battleground, and his just whole plan just goes out the window because they've just subverted his plans. However, I have known DMs to be, and I have as a DM, as a new DM, have been attached to the plans that I've created so thoroughly in my mind, and feel kind of, I don't know, a grief in letting go of them. I don't know if that can be the right word of it. He doesn't seem to show any of it. He's just like, the players are in charge of the storyline. They want to strip naked in a battlefield. Let's, like, he creates a whole mechanic and the players find a way around them. He just says, kudos to you. You found a way around my mechanic. Like he's the epitome of the DM who just fully lets the rule of cool rule the game,
definitely.
And I think that's beautiful to see. It is, as I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking, is there anything that is more different than Critical Role in terms of,
I think,
style?
it feels a lot more homebrew. It's super homebrew. It feels a lot more, I wouldn't say unrefined. Like, I'm pretty sure Freddie Wong does, one of the players does all of the editing and the audio, and he does a really good job of it. He's got, he's a busy guy. He's always got stuff on, but he does a great job of all that thing. So it doesn't feel, it feels professional, definitely, from the get-go. That actually brings me to one of my first questions. Monica, favorite player and or player character?
Oh, okay, this is difficult. I love the players very much. What, I got attached to all of them deeply. I would say, just because of the creative element that she brings to the table, Beth May is a force of nature. She is everyone's favorite. Like, she's a fan favorite in general. I think all of the Dungeons and Daddies fans really love all of them. Like, the ensemble is like really something we cherish. However, Beth May had never played D&D before. She was thrown into this room with Anthony Birch, creative genius, Matt Arnold, who'd played before, Freddie Wong, just the biggest nerd on the planet probably, and Will Campos, who had also played when I think he was younger, and she rolled with it.
Did she even know them? Like, I don't think she even really, that's it. No. She barely even knew the people, and which for a lot of these podcasts and a lot of real life games can, it can be challenging for a new person coming into it.
For sure. But and also she's a poet. Her sense of humor is incredibly dry and witty. And she is probably kind of like the furthest thing to a traditional nerd that you would think. Like, she'd never played, and arguably she spends most of the campaign not playing D&D. Like, she tries to find ways to solve things, which are traditionally not how D&D players would.
I don't get the impression she has picked up a player's handbook.
No. To reference our previous episode, she definitely does not have a player's handbook.
I'm just going to echo what you said. Like, I'm exactly the same. And this is another, if you've listened to my episode 2, I fucking love new players, and Beth May is the epitome of why I love new players. She's still been playing for years, and just so much more creative. Like, she does not let the rules don't really factor into most decisions that are made in this podcast, this campaign. Like, they don't really care. Like, they very much, Anthony Birch he's a referee at the best of things.
Basically is,
and she's fantastic. I mean, they're all great, and they all bring their own kind of flavor to, and they're a very balanced party. It's a great podcast.
Sorry, I was going to say, you mentioned a balanced party, and I think that is one of the keys. Like, there are more experienced players who kind of balance the scales a little bit and, drive the conversation forward. They, in terms of just the kind of classes of characters that they play, not that they matter very much, but they're actually quite balanced. And there are some really kind of interesting things that the podcast brings in, which really I'd want to adopt. Like I definitely would adopt a couple of them for my own campaigns. For example, they inspire me to do dad facts. So at the beginning of every episode, the cast goes around and gives one little nugget about their character, which may or may not have any relevance with the campaign. It could be like, you know, someone's favorite drink or someone's fondest memory or whatever. Like it can be meaningful. It can be completely useless. Generally, it's mostly useless. However, it gives this depth to the characters, which really helps them develop throughout the campaign. You know, it really helps them flesh out.
This is it. Like they don't have like an episode, like a session 0 or episode 1 where they go really deep into their character, like backstories or anything like that. There's a flavor, but these little dad facts at the beginning of each, you know, episode, they really help you picture and imagine this person. And it's a much better device, in my opinion, than a 40-page
absolutely
backstory. I mean, that this time has absolutely flown by. Give us your summary, Monica, and then I want to hear your rating.
Okay. So Dungeons and Daddies is one of the podcasts that I would recommend to a new player to be able to understand what D&D is about, because in contrast to Critical Role, it gives you fun, theater of the mind, and rules mean absolute jack shit. And I think it's a beautiful thing to behold what you can do with just pure role play. I think the additional content is worth, after you become a diehard fan, if you want to invest in these creators, absolutely do. Talking Daddies, which is the kind of behind the scenes, is beautiful and allows you to understand a bit more about how to run a campaign, how to run your character. And I think it's wonderful, as well as the additional one-shots. My rating, oh my God, this is real hard. I think it would be a 18, just because I would like to have a new episode every week. That's it. That's literally the only reason. I know it's actually...
Is it bi-weekly or is it just it's a bit all over the place?
It's bi-weekly mostly, and they're actually quite reliable. But I also listen to Talking Dads, which is published every other week. So I do have weekly content, but it's not enough. I need more. I want more. So that's the only reason why I'm not giving it an at 20. Honestly, it's wonderful. It's great. But yes, I would say 18, leaning towards 19.
Nice. Well, we don't usually both rate on these show and tells, but
I know you love it.
I've also put a lot of time into, like, I do. I love it. My rating, just I'm going to give it quickly. I'm going to give it a 19. Like, you're going to start listening to this and be like, what? You gave Critical Role a 12, but Dungeons Daddies a 19. This is my thing. This is my jam. Comedy, actual play is where it's at for me. And
authentic comedy.
Really good. Like, it's not scripted. There's nothing like that. It's fucking brilliant. And before we go to break, I'm just going to say, favorite NPC, Peyton.
Who doesn't love Peyton? Come on.
He's like the Dobby of the campaign. He is fucking fantastic.
We love him.
When you encounter Peyton, you'll latch onto him. He is life. Peyton for life.
He is life. Peyton for life.
Okay.
Before we listen to your beautiful contribution, let's go to some adverts.
The advert.
Yes.
Right. Take care in a bit.
See you in a bit.
Hey, got an idea for something we should review? Or been thinking of buying something for your D&D collection, but the price has put you off? Why not join our Patreon? For just £4 a month, you'll get a say on what content we review, and when we buy something using Patreon contributions, we'll raffle it off to our patrons. So, you'll be in with a chance of winning the thing you wanted us to review anyway. Good, right? So, go find us on Patreon at The Goblins Pockets. And of course, all new supporters get a shout out on the latest episode. Because we love you.
We're back and it's my turn.
It is.
During that break, we basically just talked about Dungeons and Daddies. It really is very good.
We love it so much. Please go listen to it.
Originally, I was also bringing an actual play podcast to this session. I'm not going to. I'm going to change gears a bit because it will just be overshadowed by Dungeons Daddies, in my opinion.
Nothing can compare.
Yeah, but I am going to be talking about a podcast today. In future, we will be talking about other kinds of content. It's just so happens today that this is a double podcast episode, and this is a podcast, and it's also available on YouTube. So you can go and watch the people. But I'm going to be talking about Adventuring Academy.
Tell us more.
Yeah, so Adventuring Academy is kind of a shoot-off podcast, or they call it a vodcast, video podcast, from the creators of Dimension 20, which is what I was going to originally be talking about, another great actual play podcast. But the DM there, Brennan Lee Mulligan, he then went off and created this podcast, which is the Adventuring Academy, which he, as a DM, interviews other DMs and players in the kind of D&D community, and they basically teach you how to be a good DM and a good player. Okay. And you might be thinking, I don't need somebody telling me how to DM or somebody telling me how to play. And you do. We all do. We all do. You know, you can watch Critical Role and be like, oh, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do this and do that. But what this does is each week Brennan brings on a guest, and they just shoot the shit basically about D&D. And sometimes it's his players, sometimes it's people he's played with in his own campaigns, like away from like cameras and things. Sometimes it's people that work on the teams of these big professional podcasts, and it's super insightful. So just a bit of background: Brennan, the DM for Dimension 20, and he's been on a bunch of other shows. He's been playing D&D since he was 10 years old, and played with his like brothers and things like that when he was a kid. And he's now, I don't want to guess at how old he is. He has a beautiful, lovely young face. But I put him in his 30s somewhere, maybe early 40s. Don't kill me.
Turns out he's 22.
Oh, shit. No, it doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. He's a fantastic DM, and he is a fucking lovely guy as well. And I think if you're going to listen to anybody give you advice on DMing and playing, he is full of really wholesome facts. One of the main things I really love about Adventuring Academy is they put a real emphasis on diversity. From the people they interview down to how to conduct your games in a thoughtful, considerate manner. They give you lots of tips on approaching diversity, and also sensitivity around the table. So like one of the things they talk about that I really like is this idea of the red X card, and this is something that I hope to implement in my next game. And basically it's just every player gets a red X card that they can show if they are feeling uncomfortable with content that's being spoken about. So whether that's a topic that the DM's raising or another player is raising that doesn't vibe with them, it's just an opportunity to, not anonymously, but to show a card like, can we move this along? And, the idea is that if something like that is happening, you either change gears real quick or move past it as quick as possible.
That's a really beautiful idea.
Yeah, this show is just full of those sorts of ideas. So the format is, I think it's usually an hour and a half a long episode. For the most part, Brennan kind of asks the guest what they're about, where they exist in the community, what they do. And then the second half is listener questions. So if you are a paid member of I think it's Dropout TV that they're kind of promoting at the time, that's their platform. But if you're a paid member, you get to write in and ask questions basically, and they then answer these questions, and these questions come from DMs and players and all kinds of people, and for the most part a lot of them are party politics questions, like what do I do if this player is doing this, or what do I do as a DM if I feel this. And the advice that they give out is really, really good. It's like I said, it's wholesome, it's constructive, it's useful. There's a fair bit of repetition as the episodes go on. I think there are 44 episodes at the moment, but it's good repetition. It's reminders to be considerate, be thoughtful of your players, be thoughtful of your DM. Don't put all the onus on the DM, and ask questions. And the crux of it is just develop your communication as a party and talk about shit that you're not happy about. And there's lots of things in there that I'm like, yeah, that's actually something I've done in the past as a player or as a DM. And it makes me think, oh yeah, I would have been better off approaching it from this angle. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's quite polished for the first 15-20 episodes, then it goes into lockdown, and it becomes a bit like this. It becomes a Zoom call, which the production volume and the kind of sound quality and everything dips, but for what it is, it doesn't matter. It's just two people talking, and it's another way of finding other things as well. Sometimes they're interviewing people that have got their own podcasts, and it's a nice divergence. Like, oh, this person sounds really cool. I listened to an episode the other day of this Native American woman that's just talking about representation of Native Americans in D&D, and it sounds like she's in the process of starting up her own podcast. I can't find it anywhere, and this was done a couple of years, so maybe I need to look harder. But yeah, it's lots of stuff like that. So yeah,
it seems tell me if I've gotten this right. It seems like the kind of streamlined, more efficient version of something that we tend to do a lot in D&D, which is adopt the best things out of other players or other DMs and kind of include them into our own games. Just in the first part of this episode, I mentioned about the dad facts and Dungeons and Dragons, and that's a way to, help with role play. And that's something that I've adopted as a DM. This seems like a compendium of best practices or inspiration nuggets that you can just take and include in your own games with a thoughtful process behind it. So, with some guidance as to how to implement it and how to do it, to the best of ways. Does that sound
definitely
accurate?
Definitely. And I would say if you're completely new to D&D, you can listen to this, but it could perhaps suffer from a bit of that kind of Matt Mercer effect, in that if you listen to this and you're like, God, I don't do that, God, I don't do that. I mean, chances are, if you're new, you're still just getting to grips with the rules and how to even orchestrate a D&D night and these sorts of things. But I would say as you develop and as you get to a point where you're like, maybe I could be doing more, or something's not quite working here, or, I want to better myself and that kind of thing, this podcast is for you. I'm actually in the process of looking for a new party at the moment. And I just wrote my kind of, Lonely Hearts classified ad of what I as a DM would be looking for, and I took so many notes from the Adventuring Academy on things that I know, and it's just being straightforward. I was really I've not had as many responses as I'd hoped for, because I was pretty hardline about I'm looking for this, not this, and that's because I don't want these awkward conversations down the line where somebody who doesn't belong in my group, but isn't not the right part, isn't suited for my party and my play style, won't waste their time by coming and playing with me. So yeah, it's I mean, it's just super useful in that respect.
And where would you suggest starting? Like,
right
you know, would
beginning.
you suggest starting from episode 1? Would you suggest jumping in?
No,
you know?
I think it's pretty timeless. Everything they're talking about, it's all 5th edition, and though some of it is a couple of years old, it's so relevant. And I wouldn't jump in at the middle anywhere, because I think you're just missing a resource. It's a bit like we were talking about last week with the player's handbook. It's a great reference. Like, if you're prepping sessions, or you're having a tricky time, go and have a look at the episode. You might find an episode that's specific to your kind of plight at the moment, or whatever it might be. But yeah, I just jump in at the beginning and just and consume, and make notes, like write down the ideas you hear, like because there's so many of them, and these are from experienced players and DMs that have been playing for a long time. I think it's kind of, I don't know if it's quite unique. I've not really seen much similar to it. I'm sure there are, but they're probably more like little pockets, like so and so interview so and so. But this is a recurring weekly podcast, and like he's interviewing the big boys. Like he interviews Matt Mercer, and he interviews like other other members of the team, the Dimension 20 team, and other people who are running, like what's his name, Murph, the guy that runs Not Another D&D podcast.
Yes.
And who's a player on Dimension 20. That's a podcast that we might get to at some point. Have you listened to Not Another D&D?
I have, like, it's on my list of things to listen to, because D&D content is so much, guys. But
maybe we'll talk about that sometime.
I think we should.
I have opinions on that. But yeah, anyway, back to Adventuring Academy. Go and listen to it. It's really good, and a great resource.
So that said, tell us, how would you rate it?
I would rate this quite highly.
Which is a lot coming from you.
Yeah. Well, this is it. I mean, it's hard when we're comparing actual play podcasts to interview shows. But
fair enough. Compared to, resources.
In terms of it, use as a resource, it's got to be an 18, maybe.
Ooh.
Yeah.
High praise.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, the only thing that's better than that would make it better is just maybe another way of consuming it. Like if it were a book, or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's full of so much good information that it almost needs to be its own. Like it could be a book. Like I don't know. Maybe Brennan Lee Mulligan has written a book of how to be a good DM, and that sort of thing.
It could be. I listened to a lot of podcasts in my life, and including some of the McElroy content, and they've created like Sawbones, which is one of my favorite podcasts. I've created a book out of it. So I don't think it's completely far-fetched. At some point, hopefully, if you're listening to this, maybe you should create, Brennan, you should create a book to, collect all this incredible information for people to be able to browse and reference. So I think it's really good, and it'll open your eyes up. If you're an open-minded person, listening to the Adventuring Academy is going to get you thinking about a lot of things that you perhaps don't think about. And especially me being a white 30-something guy, I need to be open-minded to the kind of issues and things that other people are dealing with. One of the interviews that I just listened to was with a woman who's deaf. And I'm not sure when she's got an implant now, so she can speak, but she had a massive barrier into getting into D&D, like wanting to find. She's a very good lip reader and that sort of thing, but trying to find someone who could do sign language to play people, like just things like that. You're like, shit. Like, so if you have a skill or an ability, or you speak another language, and think, oh no.
there are people out there that will want to play with you, and you know, there is someone for everyone. Listen to this podcast and or watch it as a YouTube show.
And as a short side note, I think the gaming world in general, including D&D, unfortunately, can be very exclusive. It can be very, narrow-minded, and it can be very difficult to enrich it with other people's experiences of all sorts. As you say, we're both able-bodied white people, who are who have a very specific view of the world. And the gaming world is predominantly made from people who look like us and who are like us. So I think a show that encourages inclusivity, but not just encourages, but also gives a little bit of like a step-by-step guide of just things that you can think about. I think that should be welcomed.
They interview a lot of people of color, and there's lots of different it's very diverse, the pool from which they interview from, sexual orientation to like race and that sort of thing. So it's a great resource for expanding your the way you look at the world and the way you look at D&D.
That's great.
That's
great. So Ian strongly recommends, and I will jump on it immediately because an 18 from Ian is like a natural 20 to most of us. And thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Of course. So that's everything we've got time for this week. You can still get in touch with us. You can still
support us on Patreon. Let us know, all your support will go towards getting things that we can review for you guys.
There are some things coming out. I'm thinking about when this is going to get posted. There is some books coming out that we would very much like to review. We'll hopefully get to do that with your support. And as you might have heard in the ad, or maybe you skipped it, but if you help us buy things through Patreon, we'll raffle them back off to our patrons. So you might even just win the thing that we've just reviewed anyway. And depending on who reviews it, we'll get them to sign it or something like that. Maybe it'll be worth something one day. We'll do that. So look us up. The Goblins Pockets. We're on Patreon, Instagram, and the Goblins Pockets at gmail.com.
Yes, email us with any suggestions of anything that you would like us to review. We love to hear from you guys, and get in touch.
Yeah, great.
And see you next week, guys.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.